According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, there are about 500,000 homeless people at any given moment in the United States alone. 51% of Americans make less than $30,000 a year, 78% live paycheck to paycheck, 40% can't afford a $400 emergency, and 6 multi-billionaires have as much money as a combined 3.5 billion people. If there's one thing you can't escape in politics or in popular culture, it's all the dialogue about wealth inequality.
You think all this can last? There's a storm coming, Mr. Wayne. You and your friends better batten down the hatches, because when it hits, you're all gonna wonder how you ever thought you could live so large and leave so little for the rest of us.
As a generation, millennials are doing worse than their parents as student debt severely hinders their ability to save money and plan for the future. Recently, the graduating class of Morehouse had their entire student debt paid off, which is estimated at around $40 million. On the surface, that seems to be a feel-good story about having help and success and financial security, but let's think about this. The graduating class was only 400 students, which means all of these kids in undergrad had about $100,000 in debt plus interest for 4 years before any of them even started making an income, some of them still waiting until they finish grad school. A billionaire swooping in and saving the day makes for a cute story, and a decade of Iron Man movies makes us comfortable with this, but is that really the way things ought to be? In 2017, while over 500,000 people were in poverty at any given moment, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos had a net worth increase of roughly $78.5 billion. In 2018, billionaires saw their fortune increase by 12%, with a million jumping to billionaire status every 2 days, while 3.8 million working-class people saw their wealth decline by 11%. The super rich are often looked at as heroes, the ultimate achievers of the American dream by Americans who hope to be more like them. Americans have a tendency not to see themselves as poor and oppressed, but as temporarily embarrassed future billionaires. There's something telling about how, despite Tony Stark vowing not to make weapons to sell to the military, he's still independently financing the Avengers with blood money, fresh off the military-industrial complex. American consumer culture and the myth of the American dream deify the rich and make their lifestyle an ideal to strive for, rather than a warning sign for an inhumane way of organizing society. However, the existence of billionaires, especially in a world with so much poverty and financial struggle, is proof of unhinged barbarism. Billionaires shouldn't exist. No one should ever have such an unimaginably enormous amount of wealth, while others barely have anything. Emphasis on unimaginable. Look at Jeff Bezos again. It's calculated that Bezos made over $2,000 every second, reaching nearly $9 million every hour. In contrast, an Amazon employee earning $15 an hour would have to work for nearly 600,000 hours to earn what Bezos made in a single hour. An Amazon employee would need to work 24 hours a day for 68 years in order to make what Bezos does in a single hour. Even just an income of $1 billion a year would take a regular full-time worker 4 years to achieve. Now, it's commonly said that people like Bezos deserve their wealth. He took the risks, he had the vision, he did all the work, he created the jobs, and so he just worked harder and thus deserves more.
One of my jobs as the leader of Amazon is to encourage people to be bold.
Now, there's a really easy way to break this down through the idea of labor value, which discredits this view, and really points to the workers being the reason Bezos has any money, because you have to steal it from someone to get rich in the first place, but we won't go into that. Let's just pretend that this is all true and calculate just how much smarter or better or cooler Jeff Bezos is than everyone else. An Amazon employee making $15 an hour makes a little more than $28,000 a year. Bezos' $7.8 billion net worth increase is 2.8 million times that. You're telling me Bezos works over 2 million times harder than an average Amazon employee. He's over 2 million times smarter, over 2 million times more daring, over 2 million times more deserving? Not only is no one 2 million times better than anyone else, but the idea that wealth is deserved or earned or mathematically broken down for those who can grasp it is completely untrue. Do we have to work ourselves into oblivion to live up to a standard that doesn't even make sense, or worse, a standard that kills us? Theodor Adorno called this problem the paradox of the will to live. He wrote, "The will to live finds itself dependent on the denial of the will to live. Self-preservation annuls all life in subjectivity. We literally work all day and all night because we want to live, but the very fact that we work all day and all night is what is killing us." Deborah Cook summarizes this by saying, "Survival requires that individuals spend their entire lives in the service of late capitalism, self-destructively strengthening the very forces that make a mockery of their individuality. And yet, a lot of us do this with a smile on our faces because we think we'll get to be Jeff Bezos one day." Now, some billionaire apologists may argue that billionaires help society because they donate to charities and become philanthropists like Bill Gates.
But what really touched us actually were the people and the extreme poverty. We started asking ourselves questions. Does it have to be like this?
Controversies of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation aside, the reality is that over 2,200 billionaires exist as of 2018 with a combined wealth of $9.1 trillion. And yet, homelessness still exists, most Americans struggle to make ends meet, no one has fixed Flint, Michigan's water crisis, global exploitation still leaves massive numbers of people in poverty all around the world, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of a nearly endless number of other problems. Part of the issue with this line of philanthropic argument is what's called the donor-recipient paradox. That is, people like Thomas Scallon and John Rawls would argue the philanthropic drive of people like Bill Gates may not be working properly now, but we can make it work by reframing their perspective so that even their own self-interest for wealth makes sense for them if they give money back. We can be selfishly selfless. The problem is that there's no way to actually generate a demand from donors to donate more or fix anything unfair without some ability to guarantee results from the recipient. That is, how can we expect someone like Bill Gates to give even 2 cents to charity if he can't reasonably be sure that the money is doing what he was promised it would do? And given how charity and wealth accumulation works, he's completely justified in not giving more because there's no way to know. Occasionally, you have billionaires like Elon Musk, who try to sound like they want to address real problems like Flint's water. Musk attempted to get a team together that would give all the houses in Flint water filters along with free laptops for the schools and come up with some sort of plan to figure out what to do with the contaminated water supply. For Musk, it made more sense somehow to waste all this money on a convoluted analysis of a problem we all already understood rather than simply writing a check to the city. Here's the truth. If the billionaires were really going to do something, it would have already happened, and there's no way to make them do anything as long as they exist. Let's stop pretending that poverty will be eradicated by making rich people richer. This means it's not just billionaires that are the problem, it's the economic system itself. The internal logic of capitalism necessitates that businesses prioritize profits because if they don't, another business will. Businesses will always prioritize profits over people, the planet, and peace in capitalist society. Let's consider the $15 minimum wage for a second. There are just over 52 weeks in a year. A 40-hour work week at $15 an hour for 52 weeks is roughly $31,000 a year. Taxes alone cut that back down to under $30,000. Remember, right now, 51% of Americans make less than $30,000 a year. The $15 minimum wage is so modest a proposal that it will not lift Americans out of this $30,000 threshold after taxes. While a $15 minimum wage would have a huge impact on the lives of the working class, this is such a small concession that impacts the wealthy corporations about as much as a single raindrop impacts the ocean. And yet even this meets resistance every step of the way. Public pressure from Amazon workers and the Fight for 15 movement, coupled with the national awareness from Bernie Sanders, pressured Amazon to raise its minimum wage to $15 in 2018. But Amazon then proceeded to strip their workers of eligibility for monthly bonuses and stock options. Workers end up begging for scraps, while any demand made of the rich is framed as being greedy and entitled. The economy doesn't serve our needs. We serve the needs of the economy, which is to maximize profits for the elite few at all costs. A tiny percentage reap the benefits, while the rest of us are exploited to no end. We won't be given concessions. The rich and powerful won't choose to move us past this inhumane barbarism into a truly ethical and civilized society. Change doesn't come top down. If we don't do this ourselves, it'll never happen. I want to live in a loving society that prioritizes people, peace, and the planet, not profits. I want communities built on supporting each other's needs. I want to live in a civilized, ethical society. Unfortunately, as long as billionaires and capitalism exists, that's impossible.
What'd you say just a minute ago? They had to wait and save their money before they even thought of a decent home? Wait for what? Until their children grow up and leave them? Until they're so old and broken down that do you know how long it takes a working man to save $5,000? Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so. People were human beings to him, but to you, a warped, frustrated old man, they're cattle.